Did you notice the words on your Sunday bulletin? Hope is the thing with feathers. Last week I spoke of faith as the light that we kindle in the darkness. Faith is that thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. That irrepressible voice we cannot help but hear and sometimes even make ourselves. Whether you're whistling past a graveyard or entertaining yourself through a chore, when you sing, you give flight to hope. And so if faith is a light, then hope is a song. And with that song in our heart, I now invite Jenna Penny to light the candle of hope. I invite you to join with me in sharing this responsive invocation that we use throughout the month of Advent. In the dwindling daylight, we light a candle of faith that light will return. In the encroaching cold, we light a candle. In times of fear, in times of doubt, indeed. It is my custom to repeat a few readings from time to time, especially in Advent, those that are not sacred by nature but precious in their power to evoke the season, its meanings and its powers, especially those that relate to the experiences of children. And this week I bring to you, not memorized, sadly, I can't get it all done, words that were printed in 1897. Dear editor, I am 8 years old. Some of my little friends say there is no Santa Claus. Papa says if you see it in the sun, that's a newspaper, it's so. Please tell me the truth. Is there a Santa Claus? Signed, Virginia O'Hanlon, 115 West 95th Street, New York, New York. We take pleasure in answering at once and thus prominently the following communication, holding the reader as we do in great esteem, and its affection, her affection for the sun. Virginia, your little friends are wrong. They have been affected by the skepticism of a skeptical age. They do not believe except they see. They think that nothing can be which is not comprehensible by their little minds. All minds, Virginia, whether there be men's or children's, are little. In this great universe of ours, we are but a mere insect, an ant in our intellect as compared to the boundless world about us, as measured by the intelligence capable of grasping the whole of truth and knowledge. Yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus. He exists as certainly as love and generosity and devotion exist, and you know that they abound and give your life its highest beauty and joy. Alas, how dreary would be the world if there were no Santa Claus. It would be as dreary as if there were no Virginias. There would be, not to believe in Santa Claus, you might as well not believe in fairies. You might get your papa to hire men to watch in all the chimneys on Christmas Eve to catch Santa Claus. But even if they did not see Santa Claus coming down, what would that prove? Nobody sees Santa Claus, but that is no sign that there is no Santa Claus. The most real things in the world are those that neither children nor humans can see. Did you ever see fairies dancing on the lawn? Well, of course not. But that's no proof they are not there. Nobody can conceive or imagine all the wonders that are unseen and unseeable in the world. You may tear apart the baby's rattle to see what makes the noise inside, but there is a veil covering the unseen world which not the strongest person or even the united strength of all the strongest people that ever lived could tear apart. Only faith, fancy, poetry, love, romance can push aside that curtain and view and picture the supernal beauty and glory beyond. Is it all real? Virginia, in all this world, there is nothing else real and abiding. No Santa Claus? Thank God he lives and lives forever. 1,000 years from now, Virginia, nay, 10,000 times 10,000 years from now, he will continue to make glad the heart of childhood. Signed, the editor of the New York Sun. Wow. We have some wonderful music about to happen. I bid you listen with great joy.
Christmas trees and boughs of holly, Yuletide logs and mistletoe,
candles burning bright and meadows frosty white, and faces in the firelight's glow. Sounds of happy children's voices, singing carols that you love to hear.
let the silence of the night and the winter air so still and clear.
Feels like you could reach and touch the sky, or catch a star and fly away.
Feels like you could wish for peace on earth, and all at once it would come someday.
Families and friends together feel a special kind of love and cheer, sharing all the joys of Christmas time.
I do hope you noticed at the bottom of your bulletin that all these poinsettias come from the family of Stephen and Betty Carr, and they are given in honor of them by the Fountain Street Church Women's Association. And rather than tell you who they are, I'd rather show you who they are, at least two of their members, and have them bid you welcome. Thank you very much to Marie Penny and to Joanne Peterson. Say a few words to all of us.
Just as Fred said, I'm Marie Maher Penny. I'm co-chair of the Women's Association.
I'm Joanne Peterson, and I'm the other half of the chair. Hopefully
it's
not the
chair.
seat, it's a big chair.
We're here today to talk about our Women's Association, and as we've done so in the past, to invite everybody to come have fun and enjoy hanging out with a lot of cool people. Some of you may have noticed next door we're having our annual Trinkets and Treasures sale. This has been a very long-running tradition in Fountain Street Church, and a lady who was extremely involved in it was a little feisty old lady called Trudora Flagg, or Trudy Flagg. And one year when they had discussed about not putting it on, she threw an absolute fit and said, "We must have it. It's part of Fountain Street and we're having our sale." So we two little feisty old ladies are doing the same thing. So we are a working group within the church. We, a couple of years ago, started the Memorial Guild, which serves a lot of families from our church and outside who really are very happy that we're here and that we take care of their needs at a very important time and sad time of their lives. We also fund and look after the kitchen. We do a lot of work within the church to support stuff. But in the new year, we're hoping to also do, instead of all our fundraisers, we're also hoping to add some entertainment items. And we're in the works, so we would love some volunteers and some fresh ideas. So if anybody is out there would like to come and hang out and help us come up with some good ideas, we'd love that. So you go ahead.
The Women's Association continues to strive to serve. We serve the church, we serve the community, fellowship, and financial contributions. Fundraising events covered our ongoing projects, furnishing and maintaining the kitchen, maintaining the Memorial Guild, funding flowers as needed for the sanctuary and the social hall, and providing fellowship to the Fountain Street congregation. I welcome any of you to join us. We have fun, we laugh, we feed you, and your kindness feeds our heart. So the Women's Association is looking for more people to join us. We meet on the second Monday of the month at 10 o'clock, but we're trying to work out perhaps a child care program so that ladies or gentlemen who are at home with little ones can come. But it is one of the oldest groups at Fountain Street. We're celebrating our 50th year, and I do hope you will come and join us. It is a joyous thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
while there are skills to the ringing of the individual bell, and they work on those, the challenge is the coordination of each person and each and other hands, because the next note would be down there and you could be three. It requires a high degree of awareness of everyone else. And there's a lesson in this. The lesson primarily is that we prosper and make our best work not alone, but in the midst of others who know who we are and through whom we live and move and have our being. We tend to think of spirituality and religion as being something we do between our ears, unseen, quietly, with serenity, meditating. And that's true. But if it takes place without connection, if it happens only in private, your spirit will burn very low. If you have a bell in your heart, and we all do, and you just ring it randomly, that's just noise. But if you work with someone else, if you labor on a task of value, if you submit yourself, dare I say, to the discipline of working on a common task where you don't get to choose which moment you ring, but must ring at the moment someone asks you to, you will find that the music becomes more beautiful. And such is the task of spirituality, such is the nature of prayer, not that we become private, but we become aware of our singularity in the midst of other singularities. That you are a note on the piano, you are a sound in the scheme of things. And so I invite you at this moment to quiet your heart so you can hear your inner bell. Ancient days, sometimes the noise of the world is so loud we cannot hear our own inner vibration. The bell that is ready to ring with joy or with warning. It can be easy to forget that we were created to make a sound to the ear and to the mind, a sound from the heart to the heart, a sound that can be heard not only by ourselves alone but by others. The quietness of this hour is to remind us of the sound of our own bell. To hear it as the sound only you or I can make, the note in the song that only you or I can sing, that fragment of hope that only you or I possess. And so we quiet ourselves here that we may listen both inwardly and outwardly, to treasure all that we have been given that nourishes the goodness of our being and the hope of our hearts. That when the call comes to sing with praise or to ring out warning, to make justice and liberty audible, love and peace palpable, that when those moments come, we may ring, ring, ring with all our hearts. And so let us pray with all that we carry in our hearts, in the presence of silence, which is the only wise sound for that inmost moment. And so may it be, and amen. As our choir gets into place, I'm going to read the text that they are going to sing so that you can hear it twice. It is a psalm, Psalm number 126. When God restores the fortunes of Zion, we see it as in a dream. Our mouths shall be filled with laughter, our tongues with songs of joy. Then shall they say among the nations, God has done great things for them. God will do great things for us, and we shall rejoice. Restore our fortunes, O God, like watercourses in the desert. They who sow in tears shall reap with songs of joy. Though he goes along weeping, carrying the seed bag, he shall come back with songs of joy, carrying his sheaves.
May those who sow in tears reap with shouts of joy, of joy. When God restored the fortunes of Zion, we were like those who dream. We were like those who dream. Then our mouths were filled with laughter, and tongues with shouts of joy. Then it was said among the nations that God had done great things for us, and we rejoice. May those who sow in tears reap with shouts of joy, of joy. When God restored the fortunes of Zion, we were like those who dream. We were like those who dream. Then our mouths were filled with laughter, and tongues with shouts of joy. Then it was said among the nations that God had done great things for us, and we rejoice. Those who go out weeping, bearing the seed for sowing, shall come home with shouts of joy, bringing in their sheaves, bringing in their sheaves, bringing in their sheaves.
Thank you. What a delightful assortment of music we've had today, with full choir and a smaller choir and the bells to ring. 'Tis the season to sing, in whatever form. As I prepare my words before you today, I invoke always the memory of those whose lives reached their completion at this time in years past, those known or unknown to us, whose names may be familiar or forgotten, but who nonetheless by their lives gave us this house in which we worship, in this community in which we have our place and customary comforts. I lift up especially the names of Helen Rossano and Lee Rasmussen, of Arlene McDonald and Rufus Teasdale, of Edwin Wheeler, of Doug Castleman and Mary Murphy and Jack Waltz, these and others whose souls are a blessing to us, the living. El Malay Rachamim, Shokein Baromim, God filled with mercy, dwelling in the heavens heights, bring proper rest beneath the winds of your Shekhinah to the souls of our beloved who have gone to their eternal place of rest. May you, who are the source of mercy, shelter them beneath your wings eternally, bind their souls to you and to we the living, that they may rest in peace, that we may be at peace, and let us say, Amen. A couple of fragments to position your minds as we proceed forward in this exercise of hope. Martin Luther King at one point said, we must accept finite disappointment but never lose infinite hope. Finite disappointment, infinite hope. Jürgen Moltmann, a theologian of the 20th century, wrote, totally without hope one cannot live. To live without hope is to cease to live. Hell is hopelessness. It is no accident that above the entrance to Dante's Inferno is the inscription, leave behind all hope, you who enter here. That's a beautiful poem. I read it, and my little bit of Italian allowed me to read it side by side from time to time to hear the words, because sometimes the sound of the Italian gives a richness that the English translation can convey the meaning of, but not the sensation. The beginning of it is beautiful. Nel mezzo de cammin da nostra vita. In the midst, the middle of our lives. Mi ritrovai per una selva oscura. A selva oscura is a dark wood, obscure. Che la dritta via era smarrita. Which way I had lost. He was lost in a dark wood. And that's how it begins. You see, he gets lost in a wood in the poem, and he encounters Virgil, the great Roman poet. Dante being the poet, he now encounters his peer, as it were, or whom Dante thinks is a peer, and Virgil agrees to shepherd him through the 9 circles of hell. Tell him what's going on. And of course they reach that famous entryway you just heard about, but in Italian it sounds even more ominous. Lasciate ogni speranza voi che entrate. It's almost like a threat. Abandon hope. Abandon all hope, you who enter. If you know the Greek story of Pandora, who lets loose all the evils of the world, even she in the box finds one thing left, hope. In hell there is not even that. This second Sunday in Advent is about hope, because for generations we have lifted up that spiritual trinity of Paul, faith, hope, and love for the first 3 Sundays in Advent. And we know they're connected somehow. After all, Paul himself said, faith is the substance of things hoped for. So there's a connection here. But it also can be expressed in different ways. For example, I am a pilgrim soul. I think I am ever on my journey of discovery, and I have done so physically as well as spiritually. So Dante's story of wandering through the woods, getting lost, sings to me, and I understand it. He loses his way. He enters a hopeless place. In some ways, faith is the trust that we're on a dependable path that goes towards something we hope for. We want to get to the destination. That's one way to look at hope, as a destination, a dream, which we heard about in the psalm, as a dream. I like Barbara Kingsolver, though. She puts it in a different way. The very least you can do in your life is to figure out what you hope for, and the most you can do is live inside that hope. Not to admire it from a distance, but to live right in it, under its roof, as though it were a home that protected you from things outside. Of course, I just mentioned that hope can be a dream, as we heard in Psalm 126. It's a beautiful sentiment, one picked up on by Dr. King himself in his famous speech, the I Have a Dream speech, in which he expresses his hope that the nation will one day rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. And he gives other examples of his dream, which is a hope for the nation. Some of you might have seen recently that the future Duchess of Cambridge, that would be Meghan Markle, for those of you who don't follow the tabloids, was recently picked up on a video she recorded a year or two ago, in which she extols the capacity of women to change the world, and she repeats the phrase, "Girls who dream become women of vision." Dreams, visions, hopes. Even in the book of Proverbs it says, "Without a vision the people perish." If we have nothing to hope for, as Jürgen Moltmann says, we're not living truly at all. We are in a kind of hell. So that makes me wonder about that phrase at the end of the psalm. It's a powerful phrase. "They who sow in tears shall reap with songs of joy." Though one goes along weeping, carrying the seed bag, that person will come back with songs of joy, carrying sheaves. And I'm trying to figure out the weeping and the joy part. Why the weeping? Why would anyone sow in tears, even carrying a seed bag? And then it occurred to me, this was written at a time when agriculture was not mechanized or industrialized or fertilized. You may have just enough seed to plant what you hope will grow. Just enough. And if it doesn't grow because of a drought, or if the birds come along and eat it, then you've lost everything. You have to invest everything in your crop if you were to get a crop back. So I can imagine some fear and trembling as some farmer walks down a furrow, putting one seed at a time, lest some of them blow away, gently pushing the dirt over the seed, making sure the birds will not take it. I can imagine some degree of fear and dread, because you have to give it your all to get what you need. These are all images of hope, images that also have a sense of risk in it. And I want you to hold that as I lift up two stories that I think capture some of this nature of hope. Today is December 11th, if I'm mistaken. Am I right? 10th? 10th. Today's the 10th. Sorry. It's been a busy week. And it's right between 2 days, some of you know, and all of us need to know. One of them would be December 7th, which we all know from history as we've learned it or experienced it, was the first day of our American experience of World War II. The other is the day after tomorrow, on Tuesday, when the festival of Hanukkah begins. And together they give us a sense of what hope is and is not. Let's start with December 7th, which, by the way, was the second Sunday in Advent in 1941. I looked it up. And like a lot of people, I'm sure many of you or your families had been to church and had come home and were about to have Sunday dinner with a certain merriment. And the radio was playing, and it was interrupted by the news of the attack on Pearl Harbor. I'm sure most of those here who remember it as young people. Very few are left who were fully grown. And so the weight of that moment may not be as evident to the younger ones as to the older ones, but even I, who remember with great clarity at the age of 10, the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Or a year earlier, the Cuban Missile Crisis. Even as a child, I sensed the momentousness of the occasion. Something powerful and changing was happening. Now, I lift this up because a couple of weeks ago, I started a story, and I'm going to finish it now. Aaron Lerner was a young physician, and I was sent to see him as a young student minister. Being a Unitarian, his atheism was not a problem for me, and because he knew I was a Unitarian, he knew that me being a minister was not a problem for him. Now, what I mentioned to you last time when I mentioned him was that in his earlier career as a physician, he was drafted, as many men were, and he was assigned to the European theater as a physician. And in the spring of 1945, he was among the first to enter the camps with the names that still cause shudders of horror. Names like Auschwitz and Belzec and Chelmno and Sobibor and Treblinka, the death camps. Places created for the express purpose of exterminating people. Everyone then knew the Nazi regime was bent on destroying Jews and others, but no one imagined, even then, except the few who really knew, that it had become a state industry on a scale equal to the manufacture of bombs and bullets, literally with devoted railroads. It was an industry of destruction. I met Dr. Lerner in 1976, as I said, as a student minister, and at that point he was on the beginning stages of a terminal cancer diagnosis. Being a physician, he knew exactly what was going on, and he did in fact pass away in a matter of months. The horror of the Holocaust incinerated his faith. Whether he thought God could not exist in the face of such evil or that God permitted it, either one made God an unthinkable part of his life. So now he was a fierce atheist. His hero was a fellow named Giordano Bruno, an Italian scientist who dared to say that the sun was but another star in the sky and that there were other planets with other people upon them. And the Catholic Church said, "Oh, no, you don't," and tied him to a stake and burned him to death in a place called the Campo di Fiori in Rome, the field of flowers. That's the part of the story I told you last week, but here's the rest. He was married to a Gentile, which is to say not a Jew, but also to say a Christian woman. She was very quiet when I came to visit him. She brought the tea and brought the cookies and attended him and me and never, ever took part in our conversations. She sat there, hands in her lap, ready to move whatever needed to be moved, to provide whatever needed to be provided. And when I say Dr. Lerner and I conversed, what that really meant, he gave disquisitions and I listened. He talked, and he talked a lot about science and pathology and truth and Giordano Bruno, but of course the evils of religion and the false notion of God. He never ceased to be enthralled by the power of his own rightness. He never, ever mentioned the war. He never told me a word about his experience, not one. I did not learn that until after he died. You see, I went to call upon his widow, as pastors ought to do, and she sat me down and she began to talk. With a very small and gentle voice, she told me about his experience in the war. She told me. She told me he lost his faith in God then. She also told me that because of that, she had to keep her own Christian faith entirely to herself. She was not allowed to go to church. Not allowed to go to church. If she spoke of God, he would berate her. If she got out her Bible in his presence, he would take it from her and beat her with it. She thanked me for visiting him. And I thanked her for telling me the rest of the story. And I walked out dizzy, trembling. That was 40 years ago, and I have never forgotten that moment. 2,000 years ago, the Jewish people were facing no less than the fourth threat to their existence. In case you don't remember, first came the Egyptians in the 10th century, then the Assyrians 250 years later, and the Babylonians 200 years later, and now it was about 150 years before the Common Era, and they were the subjects of a Greek empire that lived up in Syria and exerted power over them in what we now call Palestine. The Syrian king Antiochus IV Epiphanes had decided everyone should be noble Greeks and told them all to give up their religion. and backed it up with spears and shields and men. An insurgency began. They fought a guerrilla war, and to everyone's surprise, they actually won. Their leader, a man named Judas, got the nickname Hammer Maccabee, Judas Maccabeus. And though he died during the war, his brothers succeeded in reclaiming the temple for Jewish worship, and that required rededicating it. And the story says that there was not enough oil in the lamp to last the time it would take to replenish the lamp. They lit it anyway, and it burned miraculously for 8 days, and hence the 8 days of Hanukkah, the word meaning itself rededication. That's a historic event, not the miracle so much as the event of reconquering the temple, which stood, by the way, until the year 70 in our common era, when another revolt against the next overlord, this time the Romans, failed, and the temple was destroyed for the second time, and it has never been rebuilt. The people were expelled from Jerusalem, and many were thrown out of the land itself. In the city of Rome, the Arch of Titus on the edge of the Forum has a bas-relief that shows the triumphal parade in which the soldiers came back, and one of them is holding high aloft the menorah taken from the temple in Jerusalem. To this day, observant Jews will not walk through that arch. If a people on earth had reason to give up hope, the Jews did. They had at least 5 good reasons to give up hope. And this is before the 20th century. If one reads the Jewish scriptures as a single story, Genesis all the way to the end of Chronicles, it is one tragedy after another. Slavery in Egypt, wandering in the desert, 2 civil wars, 4 conquests, and at the end, a people scattered to the 4 corners of the earth, their capital demolished, their temple upended. And yet, through centuries, including the one we have just left, they say L'Shana Haba'ah B'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem at the end of the Seder. In the prophet Habakkuk, the prophet says, even if he tarries, I will wait for him still, for he will surely come without delay, the Messiah that will come and bring them back to the land. Od lo avda tikvatenu, our hope is not yet lost, says the song Hatikva, the hope. The anthem created during the 19th century, which is now the anthem of Israel itself. And here is where the circle comes complete. Because one account says that as Czech Jews were being led into the ovens themselves, they were singing this song and they were beaten by the guards. Do you hear the irony of 2 stories of hope being beaten out of the people who dared to hope? Hope is dangerous stuff. It scares people when you have it and no one can figure out why. It's irrational to hope when people beat you, when they hold death over your hands. The author Chris Hedges, who is nothing if not provocative, wrote the following: hope has a cost. Hope is not comfortable or easy. Hope requires personal risk. Hope is an action. Hope is doing something. It never makes sense. Hope is weak, unorganized, and absurd. Hope, which is always nonviolent, exposes in its powerlessness the lies, frauds, and coercions. Hope posits that people are drawn to good by the good. This is the secret of hope's power and why it can never finally be defeated. Did you hear what he just said? Hope is always absurd. It's weak. It's powerless, which is why it terrifies the strong and the powerful, because it dares to deny the strength and power of those who believe they have it. Do you know Hannah Zenesh? She was a Hungarian Jew who lived in British Palestine, and she volunteered with 37 other members of that community to go behind enemy lines in 1944. She was not yet 23. And she was parachuted out of an airplane in the middle of the night in Yugoslavia so she could help free some fellow Hungarian Jews. She was captured, imprisoned, tortured, tried, and finally executed by firing squad. She was also a poet. And one of her poems, the most famous, is actually in our hymn book. Blessed is the match consumed in kindling flame. Blessed is the flame that burns in the secret fastness of the heart. Blessed is the heart with strength to stop its beating for honor's sake. Blessed is the match consumed in kindling flame. On the first night of Hanukkah, you light a single candle from another candle. This one. And you use this light here to light this one here. And then each night you start here and you add another and another and another until this entire Chanukiah is lit. It's not a menorah, it's a Chanukiah because of the ninth candle. Because if that one's not lit, you can't light the others. It's the helper candle. It's the light that lights the light. On the first night of Hanukkah, you light the first light. But you have to spend a match to get it started, don't you? You're going to have to spend the seed to let it grow. You're going to have the dream if you're going to get anything done. You're going to have to risk something, hope, and spend it. You can't keep it. You have to spend your hope to get anything. And if you're wrong, you lose everything. But that's what hope is. Spending it all for something you hope will happen. So what path are you walking? What are you leaving behind in order to go where you have to go? What are you living in? What house of hope are you occupying? What are you planting with your last seeds? What is the last match you have to use on a dark night? There is your hope. And if you don't live it, it won't happen. Hope. It's tough stuff. I pray all of us have the courage to live it. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be found true in thy sight, thou who art my rock and my Redeemer. O little town of Bethlehem. Is that what we're singing, I believe? But we're going to sing the other tune that you don't know because we sing the other tune all the time. This is how they sing it in England. So I want you to get your plummiest British voices up. And imagine you're in Cambridge or London and there are people in surplices walking up and down aisles. And I want to hear great British sounding voices as we sing this version of O Little Town of Bethlehem found in your hymn book. May we have such faith and hope to do the planting that generations to come may reap more abundantly than we. May we have the courage to bring to fruition our dreams and make them real with the work of our hands. We ask this that we may turn our hopes into reality, that our lives lived may not be in vain, that faith, hope, love, and joy may be a day-to-day life, not just one we talk about in church. Remembering that even as we stumble and fail, we get up and do it again, because each and every day is a day which the Lord has made. And in that we rejoice and are ever glad. Amen and amen.